This tutorial is to show you how to develop this rolled arm for the armchair. That would be a part of a Queen Anne style Chesterfield tufted armchair. So we're going to attempt to make one of these. So to take a look at this, the arm consists of this entire unit right here. This straight vertical element goes down to the legs and then curls up and around, and on the inside is flat here against the cushion. So what we want to look at is just relative sizes, of course. Cushion, it comes up about midway, it looks like, here. And then we've got this angle outward and then downward. We want to try to capture that kind of look. So the roll here that extends outward, as you can see, straight up from the inside, and then projects outward, and then has a little crease right there, and then straight down again. And then you notice in this reference, and most of them have this, they'll have these nails, these round-headed nails along the front face of the arm, just for decorative effect. You don't have to put those into this particular scene, but you can see that these the leather curves around and then comes kind of straight across with a slight bulge out here in the front. And so this has a seam right there that in this case is basically covered by the round topped nails. So we'll put the seam in there and try to get the rounding as much as possible. All right, so the easiest way to start this would be with a cylinder set on the -z axis, 16 rotation segments. We can leave it at 4 height segments for the time being. Change that later if you need to. We just leave these at default settings for our demonstration here. So we make it editable, and fortunately Maxon has wisely chosen to make everything welded together here at last, so we don't have to optimize. But what we want to do is select a group of these polygons on the side here and extrude them downward. So just looking at the curvature, you're going to have, here's the cylinder, and then the inside is going to come straight down. So come straight down here. So I'm doing this arm over there. So I'm choosing polygons that begin right on the axis point here so they can come straight down. I'm going to select that range of polygons there, leaving this much curvature on the outside. Then control drag those downward and flatten it out with the scale tool. So scale on the Y, zero out the Y here to get them flat, and then pull that arm down as far as you think the length of this arm needs to be. You can always adjust it later, of course. Now we're going to add the angle and the seam here. We'll add the angle later after we've done everything else. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to reconfigure my edge flow here. I'm going to go in and select all those edges and carefully select, let's see, make my selection tool a little less broad. Select all these edges, front and back. Like that, checking around, make sure I don't have more selected than I need, and dissolve those. Then in this case, I'm going to, just to simplify things, I'm going to also select all the bottom polygons here and delete those. I'm doing that because in my view, I'm not likely to see the bottom of this anyway, And it just simplifies the modeling process if I don't have to deal with those. Okay, now what I'm going to do is select these large n-gons here, front and back, and inner extrude to create the area of my seam and the curvature on the edge of the arm. So as I inner extrude this, you notice that one of the things that I get down here is kind of a unhealthy crisscrossing of edges. The reason for that is because, I'll undo that. The reason for that is because we left some vertices behind here that need to be selected and deleted. Select those on the front and back. So when we dissolve the edges, the vertices remain behind, so we'll just hit delete and get rid of those. Okay, now go back to our inner extrude. Everything is still selected. Inner extrude, now you notice at the bottom it's nice and clean. Now I'm extruding as far as to make this kind of an even division of polygons. I'll drop the tool and I'll come in and reconfigure these corners. So I need to create a strong corner like we did with our chess set and get rid of that diagonal line. I'm going to turn off single line mode so I can cut this straight around and keep the tool active while I connect up those vertices. Same thing here, back around to the front and finish right there. Now activate my edge mode and I can select those diagonal lines and delete them, dissolve them, go back and single line mode and reconfigure these edges on the back. Okay, so now I've got everything configured here except I don't want this edge down here. I'm going to take this right all the way down to the bottom there. So I'm going to select that edge and dissolve it. Just simplify things. See there on the back, I got everything configured there. Now I'm going to reconnect my polygons that I extruded downward. I have to reconfigure those polygons into quads up here. So my knife tool, I'm going to do it in unchecked single line so I can carry this all the way around to the back without dropping the tool, and just continue to reconnect those vertices so I get a nice quad division of polygons. And one more. Basically, I'm reconstructing polygons to replace the ones that I extruded downward. I'm going to go to single line and reconnect these across the front. And I'm going to place one more right there. Oops. One thing I don't particularly like about cinema is sometimes the snapping kind of gets in the way. So I'm going to put one right down through the center of that front panel and all the way down to the bottom. That's so I can create a rounded surface here. And I think I'll do the same thing up here. I'm going to reconfigure these just to kind of put them down through the middle of that panel. So I can round that off just slightly, put a slight bulge into that. I think those are probably fine there. Don't need to worry about any of that here because this is going to stay flat. Okay, now I'm going to select all these polygons. Don't need to worry about the back because it doesn't have a seam. Select all those polygons there, and I'm going to inner extrude just a tiny bit, like that. Now use my loop select in polygon mode and select that loop of edges, drop my tool, and with control drag, I'm going to drag that in, just extrude that inward just a little bit, just to give me my seam. Okay, drop that selection. Now I can check to see how that's looking. Take my cylinder, which I rename arm, and we add a subdivision surface to it. Take a look and see what we've got. And that looks pretty good. Now notice down here we've got a bad configuration, got a bad flow down there. So we have to go, the reason for that is that if we go back and look at our edges, we can see that when we did that other extrude, that other inner extrude, we created a configuration of edges down here that needs to be resolved. In fact, I didn't do that right because I should have done that before I added that extrusion. So I'm going to back out. I hate how light the lines go here in subdivision mode. Okay, so I'll back out to where I was before I did that extrusion. And what I need to do here is to use my knife in knife mode. Just going to go single line. So I'm just going to take this line straight down, continue it there. Single line mode, dummy. And that one down to there. Grab those diagonal lines and dissolve them. Grab those. No, I don't want to grab those. Grab these and dissolve those too. Okay, so now I won't have any problem down there. Okay, now go back to my selection. Drop that tool. Activate my move tool. Now I can control drag slightly back. Drop the tool. Add my subdivision surface mode. And it looks pretty good. And now you can go in and clean things up if you need to. Notice that it's a little polygonal right through here in our interactive render. That's partly because if you look at subdivision surface, Maxon has changed the subdivision editor from 3 to 2 iterations. And so if we put that back up to 3, you'll see that that is now smoothed off. And probably you want to have that same 3 in the renderer as well, so that when it renders it out, it makes it nice and smooth. Okay, so we basically have the shape that we need, okay, for our arm, although we got to get this angle in here. And we might want to tighten up this edge right along there to make a bit more of a crease out of that. So if we want to tighten up that edge, let's turn off our subdivision surface, and of course we can add a loop right there. See what that looks like. Subdivision surface, interactive render, and that looks pretty good. A little bit of a crease here, but you got creases over here in the real world too, and so we can live with that. Although notice that this is quite somewhat more sharp than that curve right there, so we could go in and modify that by taking our vertices and just kind of angling them off here. A bit like that, and that'll round off that, and you can jigger that around to get that rounded off as much as you like. But then the final thing, of course, is to get this angle, and we'll do that by simply putting our knife in loop mode, going about halfway down or wherever you judge would be appropriate distance, selecting the vertices, and just dragging those out to give us our angle, whatever angle you judge to be the one that you want. Take a look at it. You can see, of course, that it's too rounded off, so we need to add some control edges there. So actually, I don't like the kind of the angular look that loop tool gave me, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to use the knife in plane mode. So I'm just going to cut a plane across here, which will go straight across, which I like better. Drop the tool, grab those vertices, and now drag them out however far you need them to go. And again, to round it off. So add a couple more loops in there. One here, one above, one below. And that tightens up that curve nicely. So there you go with your rolled arm, your rolled cushion arm here. And of course, once you get all that made, then you just mirror it over to the other side, and you've got your other cushion made. One thing, though, that you need to be aware of is that this arm extends further back than the back of the cushion does, because the cushion only goes back far enough to meet that wing right there, which you've got to construct and kind of fit it in there together. I'd do them as two separate pieces and just stick them together, kind of like they are in the actual chair. So what you can do here is just, you've got this, all this configured back here. So I would just select my vertices, line them up. That manipulator gets in the way so often. I wish there was a way to kind of work around that without having to dismiss it, but so you take those down and just select these polygons here and just extrude them backward as far as they need to go. And then you can add your subdivision surfaces and so forth. If you do it right now, this will become too rounded off, of course. So remember, when you do that, you've got polygons here on the bottom that you've created, need to be eliminated. Need loop control edges here. That'll help to sharpen that up. Okay, so something like that, with additional configurations back here to clean that up. The last thing would be to add a little bit of roundness to these panels right here. It doesn't need to be much. You can just select those and pull them out a little bit. Don't poof it out too far. But when you add a rounding to it, it's going to have a bit of a roundness to it there, which is more like what we see here. So there you go. Just there's the basic workflow and method for doing this. Just a matter of coming back in and adding some cleaning up, adding your leather material. Go ahead and mirror it over to the other side so you get both exactly the same.